Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COASTER-net Updates. We've got some breaking news out of Rye, New York, where an interesting picture has been leaking around the internet at various spots. Various Twitters and websites have been picking up this story. We do have a story on this on COASTER-net.com, so you can definitely go look for it there as well. But it seems that Rye Playland is possibly looking at a major refurbishment, not just for a few rides, but maybe for the whole park. This seems like a map of the park, and it has a number of different things on the side describing what different locations are, what different symbols mean. And basically the long and short of it is that they are planning 14 new rides. We don't know over what time period. We don't know if this is a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a fantasy plan. We don't know what this is, but the most intriguing thing on the map is definitely the famous Rye Airplane Coaster is clearly right there, smack dab on it, that there's no doubting what that is. Danny, this coaster kind of lives, out there in legend. This one of those famous coasters that people wish they could ride. What are your thoughts about it possibly coming back here?
Well, I did go to Rye Playland a couple years ago. A friend of mine from college, Mike, he actually lives in White Plains, which is not very far from Rye Playland at all. I guess technically his home park if you go by distance. And Rye Playland was a park that when I went, it seemed, and this was just a couple years ago, very old school. Run down isn't really the right term, but it was a park that you felt like it really needed updating. It needed some new rides. It had some portable dark rides that they had kind of just sat there. It looks as if maybe at least one, if not both of those, or all of them are going away in favor of some new rides. It does appear from this map that the Zamperla Volair model, I think they called it Super Flight there. I think it was yellow and red. It appears that may be going away because that is right by their Derby Racer, which happily is still on this map. And that plot of land where the Zamperla Flying Coaster currently stands is the area where it looks as if there is a new coaster perhaps taking its place that is very similar or an exact replica of the old airplane coaster. But Rye Playland, definitely a park that I think needs some updating. It looks as if they would refurbish some of the entrances as well. It had multiple entrances, maybe extend the park back onto the water down a boardwalk area and maybe expand the park a little bit. Certainly something that I think would be welcome. Rye Playland is kind of a park that I've checked off my list, and I don't know if I would ever make it back there, but all of a sudden, if you refurbish the park, you build a a new roller coaster like the Rye Airplane, a replica of the Rye Airplane, and even call it that, a throwback, if you will, certainly would get me to go back there. And if the coaster's good, maybe multiple times. It's interesting. The big story of this is the airplane coaster, right? And it seems as if, immediately you think GCI, because a couple years ago, GCI had posted a YouTube video, which is still up there. We actually just got done watching it together, you and I. Now, it was a replica of the Rye Airplane Coaster, but it was placed inside Six Flags Fiesta Texas in No Limits, complete with all the other rides, the Ferris wheel, the drop tower, even Superman, Pandemonium, everything was even down to the right colors. And that is the plot of land that Wonder Woman now sits. So you wonder if maybe there was some sort of plan at one point for GCI to do this at Fiesta Texas and it never materialized. And maybe Rye Playland sort of jumped on that, and maybe they're thinking, hey, you already did some of the design work on this, so, maybe we can get a new coaster, replicate an old coaster of ours, bring it back, and since you've already done some of the work, maybe we can get it a little bit on the cheap here.
Yeah, that whole video was really strange, because I remember that being a huge talk back then.
It was so confusing, because that video came out.
Yeah, and then people would even jump on it more in the future years, because anytime Six Flags was, hinting at things for Fiesta, we always went back to that video and saying, well, the one hole in that park is a wood coaster, and GCI already had this video done of where it would go, of what it would be, And I can't tell you.
Batman. When Batman came, people thought it was that. When they put the flat rides in with the Larson loop, people thought that was it. When they teased Wonder Woman, people thought that was it. And even last year at the Pirates ride and everything, people thought that might be it. And they were teasing their Pendulum ride that they're getting next year. People thought it was that. I mean, this has been a long time story, at least 3, 4, 5 years old, and it was really, really strange that it never really amounted to anything.
And maybe the reason it never amounted to anything is, Rye Playland got some new operators, back in 2015. Maybe they put a kibosh on it and said, hey, that's something we want to do eventually. GCI says that the Rye Playland, the Rye Air Coaster, that was a huge inspiration for them with a lot of stuff that they do in their designs.
Yeah.
So I think, as much as I would love to see it at Fiesta, Texas, I've never been to Rye Playland. I think that's where it goes, though. That it has to. If you're contemplating where this coaster should go, it should stay with the historical spot. It should stay there. I think GCI would be a great company, to build it, especially with those Millennium Flyer trains. Maybe bring this park a little bit back. We know that they've fallen on some hard times. Wasn't it last year that a whole bunch of stuff set on fire at that park? Was that park with the carousel set on fire or something?
I can't recall.
It was a park in New York, and I don't know my New York parks very well. Sorry.
No, you might be right. I'm not quite sure about that. It's and again, but that tells you just how much people don't talk about Rye Playland at all. It's just kind of one of those parks that's there, and it's in an area that's heavily populated. It's not far outside of New York City. It's right kind of in the middle of all these big amusement parks. It's not far from Great Adventure. It's not far from Dorney, not far from Knoebels, not that far from Lake Compounce or Six Flags New England either. For me, if I'm going from my parents' house in Pennsylvania, it's almost like halfway to Lake Compounce. That's actually, we did Rye Playland early in the day and then went to Lake Compounce for the evening and, for night rides and whatnot. You can do both in a day. They're not that far apart from each other, yet so few people I've seen to have gone there. They have the classic Dragon Coaster is really the main, the main draw there. But, one of the oldest coasters in the country, but, it would behoove them, I think, to maybe modernize a little bit and, inject some new blood into that park, I think.
So we will keep you updated here. I think this is a fantastic idea. I'd love to see this happen. I know, our good friend Jeff, who lives, on Long Island, would love to see this happen too. His home park's Adventureland, so I don't know what that means.
Well,
so as always, I'm Andrew Barchek from Chicago, Illinois,
and Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, Red Warriors.
See you guys.